that's a moving personal story, but to call yourself a Christian is a bit different. I mean, a Christian has to believe in something. And, I mean, well, you go to church now, and you listen to the vicar, and do you kind of notice what a lot of nonsense he talks? I mean, do you really take it seriously that Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus rose from the dead, Jesus was born of a virgin, and that's part of Christianity?
I choose to accept Jesus Christ, the teachings of Jesus Christ, the story of Jesus Christ. I choose to accept that. Yeah.
But nevertheless, the stuff they believe is obvious nonsense, and you have to take the whole package, because when you talked about Jesus rising from the dead, you don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, surely?
Yes, I choose to believe in God, and I think there we might say, let's agree to disagree.
No, not at all. I came here prepared to persuade you, Ayaan, you're not a Christian. I think you are a Christian, yeah. And I think Christianity is nonsense.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali's journey is unlike any other. Born into Islam and once a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, she later became one of the world's leading atheist voices, standing alongside Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and her close friend, Richard Dawkins. But recently, Ayaan shocked the world by announcing her conversion to Christianity. Dawkins responded with disbelief. "Seriously, Ayaan? The Christian?" Now, for the first time, they sit down face-to-face to talk God, faith, and truth. This is more than a debate.
Great to see you, Ayaan.
It's a clash
Welcome.
of worldviews.
Thank you.
Watch
I think
closely and decide for yourself.
With the extraordinary few months you've just had. For those people who haven't been following it, just tell us the story how such a famous atheist, someone who had rejected religion, came to call herself a Christian.
Oh. So I want to say that I didn't, like many people who come to faith, I didn't see big banging lights, and I didn't have any of those spectacular experiences that some people share. I wish I did, but I didn't. I had a personal crisis. I lived for about a decade with intense depression and anxiety, self-loathing. I hit rock bottom. I went to a place where I actually didn't want to live anymore, but wasn't brave enough to take my own life. And so I was self-medicating. I had, over a long period of time, seen psychiatrists, other doctors. I was trying to understand my condition and trying to treat it with the help of pure evidence-based science. And in January, February of last year, I saw one therapist who said, perhaps it's something else that you have, and she described it as spiritual bankruptcy. And that resonated with me, and having reached a place where I had absolutely nothing to lose, I prayed, and I prayed desperately. And for me, that was a turning point. And what happened after that is a miracle in its own right. I feel connected to something higher and greater than myself. I feel my zest for life is back. And that and that experience has filled me with humility, I have to say. And it is something that's very subjective. It's extremely difficult to explain. I'm trying to work, get into the details, the granular details of how I got there in a book, but that is a short, that's the shortest story that I can tell.
Let's go to Richard Dawkins' reaction, because
Well, that's a moving personal story, but to call yourself a Christian is a bit different. I mean, a Christian has to believe in something. And, you go to church now, and you listen to the vicar, and do you kind of notice what a lot of nonsense he talks? I mean, do you really take it seriously that Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus rose from the dead, Jesus was born of a virgin, and that's part of Christianity?
So I think because you, and I know you very well, we've been friends for a long time, and in fact, in some ways, I think of you as a mentor. I would say you're coming at this from a place of there is nothing. And what has happened to me is I think I have accepted there is something. And when you accept that there is something, and there is a powerful entity, for me, the God that turned me around, I think what the vicar is saying no longer sounds nonsensical. It makes a great deal of sense. And not only does it make a great deal of sense, it's also layered with the wisdom of millennia. And so, like you, I did mock faith in general, and probably Christianity in particular, but I don't do that anymore. And again, that is where the humility comes into it, is it doesn't seem, in 2024, after I went through that experience, it doesn't seem nonsensical to me, and it doesn't, I don't mock it. I think I've come down to my knees to say, perhaps those people who've always had faith have something that we who lost faith don't have. And people who have faith also, like the woman who told me, well, you've tried everything and you've lost hope, you've lost faith. Try it, pray. I think just in that one word, there is so much wisdom and that it's, I am stuttering and I'm staggering to say, I'm just trying to say, no, it's not stupid. Okay. It's in fact, it's clever and it's wise.
So you believe in some kind of higher power, which is comforting you, and you're obviously reacting from an Islamic past, and I know that from what you've written, that part of what you feel is that Christianity is a bulwark against Islam, which is a quite separate thing from what you've been now saying, but you stand by that. I mean, that's part of what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And I accept that, and I support that. That's why I've called you a political Christian. But from what you've just said, it sounds as though you're more than just a political Christian. I mean, it sounds as though you actually believe it. Mm.
So what is your response to those specific questions of Richard? When the vicar is saying that Jesus is the Son of God literally, not figuratively, how do you square that with your highly trained rational mind?
Well, it is, again, different planes of perception. So I choose to accept Jesus Christ, the teachings of Jesus Christ, the story of Jesus Christ. I choose to accept that. So on the personal level, the rewards I get, very subjective again, but mine and through choice, which is separate from where I think that, aside from my personal experience, the history of Western civilization is mainly Christian, and that the external forces, for instance, the spread of Islam non-violently or violently, and the challenge of Islam and the message of Islam to Western civilization can be countered and should be countered with the message of Western civilization, which is essentially Christian. And in that sense, I think there are more people who agree with me, but that is on the societal level. And then on the civilizational level, I think that every moral, you've used yourself, Richard, the phrase lately that there is moral Christianity and there is cultural Christianity. And when moral and cultural Christianity collides with moral and cultural Islam, or moral and cultural Confucianism, or cultural authoritarianism, I think then perhaps we're on the same page about that might be a way of countering it.
Yes.
But on the personal level, yes, I choose to believe in God. And I think there we might say, let's agree to disagree.
I didn't hear that.
She's saying, let's agree to disagree on the
Okay.
on the details. I mean,
But
if I,
it's more than just details. I mean, okay. I wanted to say two different things. Let's take the moral thing first. Islam is a nasty religion. I think we agree about that. But Christianity is not all that nice either. And when you think about Christianity, Christianity is obsessed with sin. St. Augustine said that we all inherit the sin of Adam. Well, of course he didn't exist, but so we inherit original sin. Original sin came down in the semen. Jesus was not conceived with semen, that's why he's clear of sin. His mother Mary had to be clear of sin as well, so she had to have an immaculate conception. This is all obvious nonsense. This is all theological bullshit. And the idea that humanity is born in sin and has to be cured of sin by Jesus being crucified, Jesus being punished for all our sins. And that is a morally very unpleasant idea. I'm sure you must agree about that.
I find that Christianity is actually obsessed with love, and that the teachings of the teaching of Christ, as I see it, and again, I'm a brand new Christian, but what I'm finding out, which is the opposite of growing up as a Muslim, the message of Islam, but the message of Christianity I get is that it's a message of love, it's a message of redemption, and it's a story of renewal and rebirth. And so Jesus dying and rising again, for me, symbolizes that story. And in a small way, I felt like I had died and I was reborn. And that story of redemption and rebirth, I think makes Christianity actually a very, very powerful story for the human condition and human existence, and the pain of suffering, but also our internal, the recognition of what you call sin, but perhaps the character defects, that both good and evil are there, but that both good and evil are in us. I think those teachings in Christianity are far more powerful and have led to, I think, the flourishing of Western civilization, compared to, say, growing up as a Muslim, when I was taught that really the only way for you to be faithful is to fear, naked fear, and to have these sets of obligations which you basically obey. And that was very much about power, it was centered around hellfire and all of these other things. And so Christianity, as I experienced, I'll give you an example. When I was an atheist and I was going all over both the United States and all over Europe, mocking Christians, making fun of them, making fun of faith, as you're doing now, dear Richard. I was walking with 6 to 7 men at any given time, protecting me armed from things that I said that were offensive to Muslims, or Muslims thought were offensive to them. Christians were writing me letters saying, you know, we're going to pray for you, you're misguided. And I think that alone defines for me the distinction between Christianity in general, mainstream Christianity, and mainstream Islam.
Well, I must say, I've never met a vicar that I didn't like. I mean, they're always very, very nice people.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, the stuff they believe is obvious nonsense. And you have to take the whole package, because, I mean, you talked about Jesus rising from the dead. You don't believe Jesus rose from the dead, surely?
I choose to believe that Jesus rose from the dead.
You choose to believe it?
Yes, and that is a matter of choice. And it's a matter, I think it has to go back to, is there something or is there nothing? And I think you start with, there is nothing. And yes, for years I agreed with you, there's nothing. But if you come round to the idea that there might be something much more powerful than we are, something that caused everything else, then something like Jesus rising out of the dead, or these other miracles, Jesus being born out of a virgin, for that higher power is not a big deal. But again, it's a matter of choice, and it is just different planes of perception. And I think here, on this plane of perception, having been a former atheist, I don't think this is something we're going to resolve tonight or agree on right now.
Well,
and so that is where I think it's perhaps more interesting, even if you choose not to believe, to say, let's at least talk about the value of Christianity for today. For I look at these universities, the most illustrious universities of the West, and you've all shared with me images of young women draped in kefirs, the symbol of Hamas, performing the Muslim prayer. And tell me if those kids are not morally and utterly lost. And Queers for Palestine. So while you and I and Stephen Pinker and all of those wonderful people were locked up in our ivory towers, let's ask ourselves what was happening on the ground, because in the last 6 decades, we pretty much demonized Christianity and the teachings of Christianity out of the public space, out of school, out of universities. And a vacuum occurred, and that vacuum is now being filled, as G.K. Chesterton said, not because people have come to reason, but because now they'll believe in anything. There are very awful forces today out there that are claiming the hearts and minds and souls of these young students. And when you say there is nothing, you offer them nothing.
We're getting into the bigger political, cultural question. I just feel it's worth pressing one more time on this. What you said, agree to disagree, and I understand, having read Richard's letter to you, that literal belief is the bit that he can't get past. Are you saying that you don't literally believe those things? You talked about planes of reality. Is it that you see a beauty in those things and choose to suspend your rational judgment, or do you literally believe them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is something subjective, and there's a choice. There are things that you see and perceive that a different person cannot perceive. Art, music. In fact, I think you do enjoy a great deal of Christian art and music. I will look at a painting by Pollock, and I will think my 6-year-old must have spilled all the paint on the canvas and run around. And people are crazy enough to pay millions of dollars and hang it on walls. But I've actually seen people be moved to tears staring at a Pollock. That is a plane of perception that is real, but that's also very, very difficult to measure. And it's the same the way you're moved by certain pieces of music. So the fact that I have faith, and I choose to have faith because of what I've experienced, is just as real for me as it is for the millions of people who believe. But for me, what is even more real is it's the story itself and the wisdom in that story, the morality that has come out, that has evolved out of that story, the internal debates of millennia long and everything that we inherited from it. It's just too casual to cast that aside. And when we've done it, I think we have caused ourselves a great deal of damage.
Richard, having heard that story, that moving story from Ayaan of clearly how her conversion has helped her, and also she's explained in beautiful words the mode in which she believes it, do you still say you are not a Christian?
No, not at all. I came here prepared to persuade you, Ayaan, you're not a Christian. I think you are a Christian, and I think Christianity is nonsense. You have to be, I mean, you appear to be a theist. You appear to believe in some kind of higher power. Now, I think that the hypothesis of theism is the most exciting scientific hypothesis that you could possibly hold. And the idea that the universe was actually created by a supernatural intelligence is a dramatic, important idea. If it were true, it would completely change everything we know. We'd be living in a totally different universe. Now, that's a big thing. I'm sorry, but it's bigger than personal comfort and nice stories and things. The idea that the universe has lurking beneath it an intelligence, a supernatural intelligence that invented the laws of physics, that invented mathematics. And that is a stupendous idea, if it's true. And to me, that simply dwarfs all talk of nobility and morality and comfort and that sort of thing.
So would you have preferred for your erstwhile new atheist colleague, Ayaan, not to have converted? Having heard her story, would you rather...
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying that religious belief is bigger than what gives you comfort. Or it's bigger than morality, it's bigger than what gives you comfort, it's bigger than what gives you a bulwark against Islam. It's something huge, it's something terrific, and it's false.
Are you not moved at all to, she mentioned planes of reality. Is it for you entirely black and white, whether those kind of stories are true or not? It feels like Ayaan is saying that she chooses to believe them because she accesses some kind of greater truth via them and is less interested in the details. You're not softened at all on that?
Well, I'm softened by a personal story, and I'm softened by beautiful music. I mean, I'm softened by St. Matthew Passion, and not just the music itself, but the story behind it. It's a very moving story, and I'm moved by it in the same way as I'm moved by great fiction. It is fiction, and one of course can be moved by fiction. I think Ayaan has described me as the most Christian person she knows, and
Yes.
and that may be true in certain senses, in a cultural sense, and I certainly, when you say, excuse me, when you say Christianity is a religion of love, Jesus, I think, was a very, very great character, a very loving character. The bad things about Christianity actually stem mostly from what came afterwards, St. Paul and the other Christian apologists who came up after him.
So you cannot allow the possibility that Ayaan has access to truth that you yourself have not seen?
It is a scientific hypothesis that there is a supernatural creator. And I don't see how you can get to that from feelings of personal comfort or feelings of political necessity. You have to get to that from thinking.
What happens when one of the most prominent atheist voices of our time finds Christ? Ayaan Hirsi Ali's story is unlike any other. Born a devout Muslim, she walked away from Islam and became a face of the new atheism movement, standing shoulder to shoulder with Richard Dawkins himself. And now, she's a Christian. It's hard not to think of the Apostle Paul. Once a zealous opponent of the gospel, Paul encountered Christ and was never the same. Ayaan's story carries that same redemptive arc. She didn't convert through miracles or visions, but through pain. Deep, soul-crushing despair that no amount of therapy or scientific reasoning could cure. What she found wasn't just peace, it was a person. Jesus. Richard Dawkins pressed her, "Do you really believe Jesus is the Son of God?" Because at the heart of Christianity isn't tradition or morals, it's Jesus. If he isn't Lord, Christianity collapses. But Ayaan now sees it clearly. She believes in the one who gives love, meaning, and redemption. Not just intellectually, but personally. Her past mockery of Christianity has been replaced by awe and humility. Her journey is a reminder, Christianity isn't fiction. It's freedom. And if this conversation stirred something in you, take the next step. Dive deeper. Books recommended books. Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis. The Reason for God, Tim Keller. Confronting Christianity, Rebecca McLaughlin. Is Atheism Dead? Eric Metaxas. Jesus Christ is still calling hearts, especially those who once opposed him. Just like Paul. Just like Ayaan. This is the power of the gospel. It changes everything.